This is water, a colorless, tasteless, odorless liquid, compounded of 2 volumes of hydrogen to 1 volume of oxygen, a necessary of life. This is California, leading the nation in population growth, foremost in agriculture, heavy in industry. But this prosperity can continue only if more and more water can be brought to greater areas. Water, lifeblood of farm and factory. Water that is already in short supply, so short that many experts declare California is already overdrawn at the water bank. In recognition of this critical situation, KRON-TV presents this impartial examination of a California crisis, water. A summary of the water situation as California's governor sees it. The Honorable Goodwin J. Knight speaks from his Sacramento office at the state capitol.
There is no doubt in my mind that the number one question and problem before the people of California today is that of water. All of the 14 million people of our state realize and understand that we must have abundant and cheap supplies of water for our factories, our farms, and for domestic use. Differences of opinion have arisen, of course, as to the proper method of the distribution of this vital resource. And I, therefore, am happy to commend television station KRON for their very public-spirited interest in this timely and complex situation.
As the governor says, nobody denies the value of water. All the temper and all the oratory are directed at the ways of supplying it. You can see the situation right here on the map. Water is plentiful in the mountainous regions, mainly to the north. These are called the areas of origin. Water is naturally scarce in the south, in the large population and agricultural areas. These are called the areas of usage. Vast new water systems like the Feather River and the Trinity River projects can bring water from the north to the south. That's no problem. Engineers have solved it. The problem has to do with water rights. Who owns the water in the first place? Who pays the most for the new projects? Who gets first call on the stored water? The equities of the matter. These political and social problems are bringing about a water crisis in California. I'm Tom Mullahey, and now, without taking any sides in the matter, let's review the situation. Our need for water covers more uses than you might suspect. Many kinds of industry are possible only with an unending supply of water, like this new paper mill at Antioch, which uses 3.5 million gallons of water every day from the Contra Costa Canal. Conservation of water is important to keep our soil from being eroded away and to prevent such devastating floods as the inundation of Yuba City during the Christmas season of 1955. Water is necessary for fish and wildlife conservation, with fish hatcheries a natural byproduct of such dams as Nimbus and Friant. And a pool is always at the center of game sanctuaries, such as the Duck Refuge alongside Oakland's Lake Merritt. Water for recreation plays an important part in California life. Boating enthusiasts pursue their happiness waterborne on lakes, bays, and rivers. Sailing is enjoyed by all ages. Young sailors like these have no time for juvenile delinquency. Water sports just naturally teach good citizenship. If you like a faster pace, you can still keep to the water with speed boating, another thrilling water sport enjoyed by Californians. Watch for the rooster tail, a plume of water shot up by sheer speed. Everybody likes to get near the water. Well, almost everybody. Near but not wet. That's nice. Other bathing beauties don't mind getting their feet wet. This is Puddles, candidate for Miss Fleischacker Zoo in San Francisco. Like all animals at all zoos in California, this hippopotamus demands a constant supply of water. An educational use of water for humans, recreational for the animals, and vice versa. Most Californians think of swimming pools as almost necessities. These are blind children at their Enchanted Hills camp near Napa, better swimmers than many sighted children. These are the realities of water life, an escape from the daily grind. recreation that's become a part of the way Californians like to live. These cattle wading in the waters of the Sacramento River are getting a double kick, cooling off on a hot summer's day and drinking from a watering trough that never grows dry, unmindful of the river commerce that has made Sacramento a capital city, and the concourse of waters that made Stockton a seaport to supply the farmlands of Central California, a port linked by navigable waterways with San Francisco Bay. Yet, although great cities can thrive only as long as they have enough water, it often comes as a surprise to learn that country farmlands use water in exactly the same amounts as cities do. To be exact, an average acre of city land, with all its many homes and shops and apartments, uses exactly the same gallonage of water as does the average acre of California farmland. So windmills and their storage tanks dot the landscape in many sections, symbols of farming success, while other farms power their wells not with wind, but with electricity, like this pump, drawing water from 2,000 feet below the surface. Expensive for a drink of water, but a cheap way to change desert sand into good, productive earth. Row irrigation is part of California's controlled use of water. This grape field shows how California has become the most productive agricultural state in the nation. It is in Fresno County, most productive county in the United States. And Fresno is but one of California's 4 counties that top all others in the entire country. This fact is the more astounding when you consider that every one of these foremost counties was a natural desert just a century ago. Water made the difference. And these baby fig trees near Merced are part of the world's largest fig orchard, only because of a controlled water supply. Irrigating pasture land is another important use of water. Modern in design, but ancient in principle. Irrigation itself is an old art first mentioned in the Bible, the 2nd chapter of Genesis, 10th verse. And the river went out of Eden to water the garden. Most historians hold that irrigation began in ancient Egypt to combat the unpredictable floods of the Nile. Slaves hauled water buckets, and equally taxing methods continued in use until the invention of the steam engine. Then irrigation systems began using their own water power. This pasture uses an electric pump to draw water from a well. It's owned by Will Martin, a 4th-generation California farmer. While some farmers use jeeps to ride their irrigation lines, Will Martin prefers a horse. He says you can't train a jeep to come right up to an outlet and stand still for you to regulate the flow. A vanishing sight, a rancher and his water horse. But not all of California is so fortunately blessed with a water supply. Coalinga, California. A pleasant-looking small town with statistics that read like this. Population 6,000. Principal industry, oil. Consumable water supply, none. Coalinga has 2 kinds of wells, oil wells and wells that bring up secondary water. Okay for washing clothes, watering lawns, or even taking baths, but unfit to drink. Coalinga has 3 kinds of water faucets in every kitchen sink. 2 of the regular variety for hot and cold secondary water, and a 3rd faucet for drinking water. How do they get their drinking water? We'll let W.L. Wallace tell you. He's the mayor of Coalinga.
This is how we get our drinking water here in Coalinga. We have never had any water here fit for human consumption, and our nearest source is 50 miles away. The water is being brought in by tank car, just as it has been for the past 60 years. We have approximately 1,600 homes in Coalinga, and each home has 3 water faucets, the 3rd water faucet being for drinking water. Our regular water comes from deep wells that are dropping on an average of from 4 to 6 feet a year. Our drinking water costs on an average of $2,260 an acre foot, against the average water cost of $9 to $12 an acre foot. Our water situation here is becoming impossible, and the only hope for relief is water from the north, such as the Feather River or San Luis projects.
3 water faucets in Coalinga, the middle one for human consumption, as long as the tank cars keep running. That's a real water problem. And here's another. Take the Tulare Lake region. Half a dozen years ago, this really was a lake. Then it dried up, leaving a layer of silt on the lake bottom, productive soil. Ever since then, the whole exposed lake bed has been farmed in cotton. The only thing is, nobody lives on these farms. For the area of Tulare Lake, California, is probably the only region in the world where farmers commute to work, just like city dwellers. Early in the morning, they drive to work coming from 20 to 30 miles away. At night, they drive back again because there's no fit drinking water on their farms. This particular water problem started just half a dozen years ago. Since California's population is growing so fast, more and bigger water problems are in the making. Can they be solved? The answer lies in the sources of water. To start a rapid review on the water sources in California, let's return now to the state capitol and Governor Knight.
No one denies that there is ample water in California for all of our needs for the coming years. But the problem is this: to take the water from northern California, where there is more than a sufficient supply, and transport it to the central and southern parts of California, where there are areas of deficiency. And yet at the same time, we must provide storage capacity of water for all areas for the lean years.
Nature's water supply starts with the seasonal whims of California's rainwater and where it chances to fall. Daughter of earth and water and the nursling of the sky, I pass through the pores of the ocean and shores. I change, but I cannot die. If the poet Shelley could follow a cloud in from the Pacific, he might see some of its water dropped in the Sierra Nevada, perhaps as snow, some in Arizona, some even in Colorado. The forces of earth and sky are no respecters of riparian rights. High in California's mountain systems, snow is our first natural reservoir, a water source so important it's constantly measured and recorded. Melting snow makes the beginnings of brooks. Then a multitude of small streams, starting high in our mountains, join forces to become the rivers of California. This is the South Fork, one arm of the Stanislaus River. Water that would throw itself uselessly into the sea, but controls, dams and canals, store the water in lake-like reservoirs. Beardsley Dam is but one of several spaced along 100 miles of this river like giant stepping stones. Tied in with Donnell Dam to the north and Tulloch to the south, Beardsley is part of the Tri-Dam project, not built by the U.S. government, not built by the state, built by local irrigation districts. Power from the Tri-Dam project is leased to PG&E, an irrigation district project that will pay off construction costs in 20 years, showing how relatively small local groups can solve their water problems in a big way. From the Beardsley spillway, the Stanislaus River flows through deep gorges into the lake, backed up by Maloney's Dam. Built by the federal government nearly 35 years ago. The U.S. Reclamation Department now believes the potential at this point is far from fully used. Surveys are already underway to build a new dam just below the old Maloney's Dam, which would bury the present one under a much higher reservoir. This plan, however, is still in blueprint stages. These dams along the Stanislaus River are rather inaccessible, far from the highway, and yet the shores of their dammed-up lakes make a wilderness paradise for the sportsman. The last of the Tri-Dams is Tulloch, so near its final completion that the Tri-Dam system has already been officially dedicated, a massive modern work to equal the ancient pyramids. Yet Tulloch, too, is financed by local money. Soon, Tulloch will back up the waters of the Stanislaus into the river's largest lake. Similar to this lake above Goodwin Dam, the lowest in this series of water controls along the Stanislaus. Goodwin Dam was built a number of years ago as the first major irrigation control on the Stanislaus. Here begin the canal systems that flow through the clover country of Oakdale and on to the Central Valley farms of Madera. Two major canals for this system are started at this dam, their waters diverted to flow along both sides of the continuing river. Deeper within the mountains, in a rugged, isolated corner of Yosemite Park, is a dam of special interest to one of California's largest metropolitan areas, the dam at the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. This is where San Francisco gets its drinking water, a major source at any rate, where the Tuolumne River is blocked by the O'Shaughnessy Dam. This water is conveyed across the width of the state to fill the drinking cups and bathtubs and water the lawns of San Francisco. Two more of California's impressive dams lie close together in the mountains above Fresno, although they stand on different rivers. Friant Dam holds back the waters of the San Joaquin River, forming Millerton Lake, used by Fresno residents as their water playground, a lake so large it is used as a permanent anchorage for pleasure craft. Friant is California's second largest dam, a fact more impressive when you consider that it is also the fourth largest in the entire world. This dam is an important producer of power and flood control, and a major source of California's water supply system. Here is the start of the famous Friant-Kern Canal, transporting water from the north to the thirsty agricultural lands of Kern County. This canal flows through the counties of Fresno, Tulare, and Kern, the three richest in the world. Another striking example of the plans Californians have put into effect to meet their needs. Future needs will require systems that dwarf the Friant-Kern water complex. Due east of Fresno is the Pine Flat Dam, taming the Kings River. Here again, water power, flood control, and irrigation storage are combined to make the most use of the river at this point. Time does not permit the showing of all of California's major dams. There are many dozens more, supplying water as ably now as in the past. But California's population growth requires more water. This means more dams, more canal systems. The use of Kings River below Pine Flat Dam shows how water can be fully utilized. Not many miles below the dam, where the river flows calmly through farmlands, a diversion was built in 1908. The river itself is allowed to continue over a low spillway to be used later. The concrete piles belong to a weir, an ancient engineering principle in water systems, which regulates the flow of water into a major irrigation artery. It was built half a century ago by farmers who were trying to bring more water to their parched lands. Two of the workers were named Martin, father and son. They labored side by side to build the weir. Today, the son is a successful Fresno area farmer, Will Martin. You saw him earlier regulating his pasture water by horseback. Today, he is chairman of the Consolidated Irrigation District, directly concerned with Kings River water. On his farm near Reedley, Will Martin has this to say.
My parents moved to this particular area from San Joaquin County in 1882, settled on the property we're now standing on. This property here has been under cultivation for approximately 70 years and producing, I suppose, just as well or more crops today, or better crops today than it ever has in the history of it, showing that water has been a wonderful boon to this area. We have heard, read, and I suppose it's a fact that Fresno County is the richest county in the United States, practically in the world. Water has made it that wonderful area that it is. Due to the increased population in this area, our prosperity has been upon more water and better water.
Every old-time Central Valley farmer knows, even better than his scientific sons, the importance of water. For he remembers land without any water at all, and he's worked for years to turn sand into productive soil. California's population is growing at a spectacular rate. This means more farmlands to feed more mouths, more water all the way around. It's a problem California has always faced, and thus far has always met squarely. Governor Knight has this to say about the history of water in his state.
Since the days when gold was first discovered in our state, water has played a vital role in our agricultural, industrial, and economic progress. None of this impressive growth would have been possible unless we had first met the vital needs of our state for abundant and ample supplies of water.
From the beginning, with the founding of the missions, water has played a strong hand in California history. Many of the earliest missions had to be moved several miles to find more adequate water supply. This historic well harkens back to the founding of its mission, San Antonio de Padua, not far from the present King City. The well is now restored with its endless chain of buckets moved by muscle power. Later, when Marshall brought Sutter the news that would start the gold rush, water became a fact of economic life to the 49er. The earliest miners panned for gold in the branches of the American River, using water to sift gold from the silt, separating it with the rocker, only possible where there was water. Then hydraulic mining, forcing earth and gravel from hillsides with powerful jets of water to expose golden nuggets. This called for powerful pumps, and some of the miners devised water systems that baffled the engineers. But it was only when water was used to irrigate our lands that California's great growth began. For in California, man irrigates and cultivates, only God exaggerates. Such is California's water situation, past and present. And now for some considerations of the future, beginning with Governor Knight.
Great strides have been made towards the solution of our water problems in California. The creation of a single water department in the state, the authorization of the Feather River Project, and the final development of the California Water Plan all have been splendid forward moves towards ultimate success.
The plans and proposals to solve the state's water needs are several and varied, all complex. But they boil down to this. In the north, along the coast, a vast system of dams and canals and pumps will move the water uphill over the hump of the mountains to be conveyed to the south. That's the Trinity Project. The Feather River Project is even bigger. It's also in the north, and it hinges around the world's biggest dam to be built at Oroville. It's gone through the ceremonies of groundbreaking, but all the money to build it hasn't yet been approved by the state legislature. Both of these huge projects in the north, Trinity and Feather, are planned to supply water to the south. It's basically simple, until the matter of water rights gets into the discussion. One of the leading advocates of the northern point of view is State Senator Edwin Regan of Shasta and Trinity counties.
The most complex and the least understood of all of California's water problems is that of the distribution of the surplus waters of the north to the water deficient areas in the southern part of the state of California. If you drew a line east and west about San Francisco, California, above that line lies all of the remaining unappropriated waters comprising many millions of acre-feet annually. These waters are necessary for the state's growth. The northern part of the state desires that the southern part have the surplus waters, but the North has refused in the fight at the legislature at this time to allow to be frozen into the Constitution of this state a law which would take advantage of the North, that is, which might deprive the North of those waters needed for the North's own growth. The only thing that the North requires is that there be a fair distribution of the waters without advantage to any portion of the state of California. That is what we are asking, and that is what was the basis of the entire water controversy at this state, in this state, during the last session of the state legislature.
The southern part of the state takes exactly the opposite view. Also on the steps of the state capitol is Richard Richards, senator from Los Angeles County.
Since I represent Los Angeles County in the state Senate, I have tried consistently to espouse the Southern California point of view in regard to the water problem. And our point of view is simply this. We in Southern California desperately need water. We will need it particularly before the construction of our statewide program can be completed, unless that program is started very soon. Many other areas in the state likewise are water deficient areas. We feel that since Southern California will have to pay more than half of the many billions of dollars that will be required to develop the state's water system, we want to have reasonable assurances that we will get water as a result of this expenditure. To do this, we must have a settlement of the water rights questions on the legal field. To do that, we must have a constitutional amendment. And every expert on the water question throughout the state of California has recognized the necessity of a constitutional amendment to settle the water rights problem. We have failed to get it in this session, largely because of a willful group of people in the state Senate. I do feel that within a short period of time we will solve this problem. We must do so on behalf of the state itself.
In a state office building on Sacramento's N Street, in view of the Capitol Dome, there is an engineer whose job it is to look right down the middle of the water controversy. He is Harvey Banks, director of California's new Department of Water Resources.
California has always accepted the responsibility for the development of its water resources and has been a leader among the states in that regard. First planning by the state for water resource development started in the early 1880s and has just recently culminated in the publication of Bulletin 3, the California Water Plan. California Water Plan is a master, comprehensive plan for the fullest practicable development of California's water resources in all areas of the state to meet the present and future needs for water for all purposes in all areas of the state. Now, California's basic water problem is the maldistribution of its water resources. About 2/3 of the water resources of California occur north of the latitude of Sacramento, up here in the Sacramento Valley in the mountain area, over here in the north coastal area. On the other hand, about 70% of the ultimate water demand of California occurs south of the latitude of Sacramento. Here in the great San Joaquin Valley, in the San Francisco Bay Area, the central coastal area, the great desert area, and this tremendously populated metropolitan area here of Los Angeles and on to San Diego. The final answer to all of this lies in the construction of projects throughout the state. The first of those projects is the authorized Feather River project, now under construction.
California crisis, water. The engineers tell us we have the water to meet our future needs for an ever-growing population. We have the plan, the methods ready for developing more water and making it available where needed. Only the human equation stands in the way. But water is critical right now. And with water already short, we Californians cannot continue to be overdrawn at the water bank, lest we become water bankrupt.